last month, Bill Gates positively mentioned the nuclear power plants in his
Totally
book.
absurd. Totally absurd what he said. Completely absurd. Even the new nuclear power plants, they're so much more expensive and their levelized cost is so much higher than solar and wind. It's not even in the same ballpark. Why would you build nuclear power plants, even a new generation, that are so much more expensive and that have a potential problems in terms of externalities when you have solar and wind? It's now so much cheaper and getting cheaper and cheaper. It makes no sense. And it's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now, it won't happen because the marketplace is too powerful a force. We have distributed energy. How does nuclear compete with the sun? How does nuclear power compete with the wind? It's nothing. I don't understand why he's doing that. He must be getting poor advice. But I can tell you that we're not going to be building even a new generation nuclear power plants. Many of the big companies have already gotten out of the business.
I mean, because even Korea, they are trying to reduce nuclear power plants, but they are actually building a lot in other countries. So, well, obviously, that's not a good step that we are making.
Well, the other thing is, what I'm going to say here is that if you don't make this transition really quickly, you'll be a second-rate power in 20 years from now. You will have lost the infrastructure transition period of time. Everyone else is moving this way. Even now, the Biden administration here next to this country, they're moving to the plans that we developed with Europe and China, now in the US. Korea will be out of the game in probably less than 10 years, unless they move quickly. The problem is, and I'll give you the statistics, they're not good in terms of where your country is now. 68% of your electricity right now, today, is from fossil fuels.
Yes.
Renewables only make up 6% of your entire electricity. It's a very poor record. You import 98% of your fossil fuels imported. You are one of only 2 OECD countries that are still building coal-fired power plants in Southeast Asia. That's absurd. South Korea is ranked as the highest stranded assets country in the world in terms of fossil fuels, stranded assets. You're the 5th largest producer of nuclear. So you don't have a good track record there, all right? On the other hand, you have world-class companies with the technology that can get you in the 3rd industrial revolution. Telecom and ICT. You have SK Holding. They're a massive. You have Samsung. I've worked with both of these companies, consulted. These companies have huge amount of expertise in a lot of your high-tech SMEs in communication ICT, first part of the infrastructure for a 3rd industrial revolution. Then the third part, mobility. You've got Hyundai and Kia. So in your cultural DNA, you have the fortitude for being resilient. And we need a resilient society in the future. You have it in your cultural DNA. And so I think that Korea could move forward really in a major way in the Pacific, in the Asian theater, in the world for a 3rd industrial revolution infrastructure.
Well, you've mentioned all that. I mean, EU, maybe China have prepared for more than 10 years for Green New Deal transition in various sectors. And Korea, as you said, we have a lot of elements that are prepared to actually go forward. But why not still today didn't we do that? I mean, we have all this, some of infrastructures, elements, powers, we all do have it. But why do you think we are now only like scratching the surface of this movement?
I think that, I'll give you an example. Well, in the European Union, we've had 20 years. I've been working with the last 4 presidents and the current president of the European Union. It's taken us 20 years to get to where we are, but now we're going. In China, I've worked with the leadership there since 2013, and we did the 13th 5-year plan was a success. Korea's been held back because you have, I would say, some of your big companies and industries have not looked forward enough. All right, they've not looked forward enough. I would say that your power and utility industry has been a laggard. They've been bad on this. They've been relying on coal and fossil fuels, and they got to move quickly. Where you're lacking is the electricity internet. KEPCO is not has been far behind where we are in Europe and China. I'm sorry, far behind. Heavily on nuclear and fossil fuels. That's got to change. Now, what I would say is KEPCO's done something very good in the last year. They've announced a high voltage direct current transmission line across Korea. That's the beginning of the transition. That's good, but they got to get off fossil fuels. Those are stranded assets. The fossil fuel industry is collapsing because solar and wind are now cheaper than all fossil fuels and nuclear. And this is what the KEPCO should do. That business model that I'm going to explain to you has now been accepted by all 4 power companies and by ENGIE in France and power companies across Europe and beginning now in America. In 2010, I said to E.ON, one of the big 4 power companies, their CEO, and I want KEPCO to hear this. I said, you're not going to be leaving the second industrial revolution of electricity infrastructure tomorrow morning, but the disruption is going to be in the next 2 or 3 years when solar and wind to get to about 14% electricity. I said, the transition's 20 years, the disruption's 2. If you don't have a new business model in place in the next 2 years, you will be as stranded assets. You won't be here, even though it's a 20-year transition. So I said, in the new electricity of the third industrial revolution, infrastructure, you don't generate any of the electricity. How are you going to control every landscape where the sun shines and the wind blows? I said, what you're going to do is you're going to set up partnerships with thousands and thousands of businesses. You're going to help manage the energy that flows through their logistics, their supply chains, their production, their storage, their distribution. You're going to help manage that energy flows and using big data and analytics for those companies so they can find ways to increase their aggregate efficiency in every conversion across all of their value chains, reduce their fixed costs, plunge their marginal costs, reduce their carbon footprint. In return for you managing the electricity across all of their value chains, those businesses will share back their productivity gains with you, the electricity company, in performance contracts. You'll get a piece of their gains. Every one of those companies are now moving to that new model in Europe. They can do this. And KEPCO should realize they have all the expertise to manage energy. They have to manage the new energies, solar and wind. I've yet to have anyone pick up the phone and give me a call. We could put them on what they need to do. And the Korean government, whatever your new government that comes in, I guess you have a new government coming in, you got to move quick. And I have no doubt that this can happen. You have the expertise, you have the industries that can do this, you have a younger generation motivated, you have shown yourself able to do this before, after the Korean War until now. There's no reason Korea shouldn't be leading the Pacific and Asia into this third industrial revolution resilient infrastructure.